There is a certain unspoken agreement we like to believe exists between artists and audiences. A kind of warm, fuzzy, transactional understanding that goes something like this. You create the thing. I adore the thing. You, in turn, will appreciate me for adoring the thing, and then I, in turn still, will appreciate you for appreciating me for adoring the thing. It's simple. It's clean. Everyone's a winner, baby. That's the truth. But occasionally, just occasionally, that agreement gets ripped up, set on fire, and used to light a joint by the very person who wrote the thing you love. Because, as it turns out, some authors hate you. Not in the fun, bratty celebrity way. Not in the I don't owe you anything kind of way. Not in like a professional wrestling heel kind of way where they're like appreciative of the booze. No. This is like genuine, deep, philosophical hatred. The kind of contempt that normal people usually reserve for like traffic wardens and Amy Schumer. These are the literary minds who, despite being worshipped, quoted, adapted, immortalised and adored, would rather jam a fountain pen through their eyeball than suffer another heartfelt fan letter. And really, it's kind of beautiful, because we've built this entire culture around the idea of connection, author and reader, creator and fan, minds entwined across time and space. You will feel moved by a novel. You'll cling to a paragraph like it saved your life. You will get the quote tattooed on your ribs, and then you find out that the person who wrote it thinks that their fans are emotionally stunted parasites contributing to the slow decay of modern society. It's the equivalent of being beaten to within an inch of your life by the very book that you claim saved it. Now, most artists, especially in the age of social media, they learn to play nice. They retweet fan art, they will sign paperbacks, they will pretend to enjoy Q&As even though someone always asks a question that starts with this is more of a comment than a question, but some fucking hate all that shit. They react to the love and adoration being fired at them the same way Keanu does in The Matrix. This video is for those people. Because there's something morbidly fascinating about creators who can't stand their own acclaim, who find the very idea of fandom itself insulting, who see being beloved not as validation, but as a symptom of cultural failure. So, as you sit there surrounded by your neatly alphabetized bookshelves, or maybe carefully curated comic collections, just know that some of the minds behind those beloved works absolutely fucking hate you for owning it. So buckle up, buckaroos. Today we're going to take a slow, painful stroll through the bizarre, brilliant, and often hostile territory where genius collides into resentment. Fair warning though, if you're looking for heartwarming anecdotes and wholesome author-reader dynamics, this video is not for you. Alan Moore will once again feature in this video. Just don't worry, there will be Alan Moore. This video is really a video about love. About the love that you feel for authors. And what happens when the author feels absolutely fucking none of it back. If anger were an Olympic sport, then Harlan Ellison would have taken the gold, punched the referee in the throat, sued the Olympic Committee for copyright infringement, reported the audience for griefing, and then written a Hugo Award-winning short story about it. This was not a man content to resent the world quietly. No, Harlan Ellison was raging. He raged loudly, spectacularly, publicly did he rage. The kind of rage that could curdle milk. Do you know what I mean? Like, the kind of rage that turns compliments into legal threats and fan admiration into just like open warfare. He didn't just hate the bad fans, he hated the good fans, he hated the polite fans, the fans who read his work, loved it, and then had the sheer audacity to tell him so. That, to Ellison, was a boundary violation on par with breaking into his house and shagging his typewriter. Because here's the thing, Ellison didn't want to be loved. He wanted to be right. And more than that, he wanted to be respected, feared even. The worst thing that you could do to Harlan Ellison was approach him like he was some sort of literary dad figure. You don't hug the prophet. You tremble in the prophet's presence, and you try not to breathe too loudly to draw attention to yourself. Do you know what I mean? He was a nutcase. But let's be clear, he was a genius. He wrote with a level of precision and just like venom that most writers would kill for. In fact, he often wrote about people who in fact killed for things. His most famous work that I spoke about a couple of videos back, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. It's bleak, it's twisted, it's a novella. It's about this sentient supercomputer that annihilates humanity and then tortures the last 5 survivors. Just forever and ever, because it hates them so much. Ellison, he would later lend his voice to the video game version of this character, this supercomputer. How much you choose to read into that is up to you, really. What Ellison hated more than anything, though, was being misunderstood. If you've read any of his work, is pretty rich, considering that he's like daring you to misunderstand his work. His prose is like, it's dense, it's like, his metaphors are rich and vicious. His endings are like sort of bear trappish, a lot of the times unresolved. So I mean, God fucking help you if you misquoted the man as well, or if you misinterpreted one of his stories, or the worst thing you could do would be to like ask him at a convention if he was inspired by Star Trek. To be fair, you would be lucky to leave that interaction unscalped. Do you know what I mean? With your scalp intact. Right, I'm going to talk about the Star Trek thing, right, because City on the Edge of Forever is widely considered one of the best Star Trek episodes ever made, and one that Ellison himself absolutely fucking despised. Not because the script was bad, mind you, he wrote the script. The script was good at one point, but the script he wrote was dark, existential, beautiful, all the things that you would expect it to be, and the showrunners reacted to it by watering it down and taking his name off of it, which obviously he took personally. But by personally, I mean he held a grudge so intense that it burned with the power of anyway, you get the idea. He would go on to publish the original version with an entire introduction that was just methodically, viciously, and gleefully insulting and dismembering everyone who was involved in changing the original script. He didn't just burn bridges, Harlan Ellison. He burned the bridge, sued the lumber company that sold the wood, and then would write a short story about how the bridge came back to life, gained sentience, and then murdered the people that walked across it. And that brings us to the fans, the poor, well-meaning fans. They loved his work. They still do. I do. But these fans back then, they wanted to connect with him. They wanted to ask questions. They wanted to express appreciation, which a fatal mistake. Ellison once said, and this is real, the two most common elements in the universe are hydrogen and stupidity. Yeah, that is a real quote. It's not a real voice, but it's a real quote. You can guess based on that quote which element he thought most of his readers were made of. The man had a zero tolerance policy for nonsense. Just no time for any sort of horseplay. Which, I mean, that would be admirable if not for the fact that his definition of nonsense included things like compliments, questions that he didn't feel like answering, interviews that brought up things he had written more than a couple of years prior, anything that required him to sit still, anything that required him to be cordial. You get the idea. He was banned from multiple conventions, not because he was like a creep or anything, although there is a whole other video to be made on that potentially, but because he was like just full-on confrontational, he was combative and sometimes physically aggressive. There are multiple stories of him getting into actual fistfights at sci-fi conventions, which I don't know. I don't go to many sci-fi conventions, but I'd imagine everyone seems pretty chill. I'd imagine it'd be hard to like incite. I feel like I could walk around most of the day like trying to incite people into a square go, a fist fight, and I couldn't do it. But anyway, there was he sued a fan. He sued a fan for quoting one of his stories in a fanzine without his express permission. You heard me right. He's just for quoting him. Imagine being that guy and opening that court summons letter. Just that was Harlan Ellison through and through. The man turned admiration into like libel. But we shouldn't like flatten him into just this cranky old guy with a typewriter and an inferiority complex. Ellison's fury was surgical. He didn't hate fans because he was a petty man, although he probably was a petty man. He hated fans because he saw fandom as something that was dangerously close to complacency. He thought that genre readers were lazy. He thought they weren't thinking. He thought that they weren't thinking anymore. They were turning complex, challenging work into comfort food. He didn't want you to love his stories. He wanted them to hurt you, to challenge you, to crack your skull open and plant something horrible in there. And when people responded to that by writing fan letters with, wee smiley faces and cute little drawings of Am on them, like, it felt to him like a betrayal of the entire point. In many ways, Ellison saw fandom the way that, like, a fire and brimstone Bible-thumping preacher looks at casual Christianity. You're not supposed to enjoy the sermon. You're supposed to be scared. You're supposed to be scared straight. You're supposed to sit there in reflection and weep and fear. And when someone walks up to him, the preacher, and says, "Hey man, that was a great speech. I was really vibing with the Jesus stuff," he would just see that as proof that you weren't paying attention. And yet, and this is the maddening thing that is a through line for all of these authors. We will keep coming back to this exact point. People fucking love him for it. People admire his anger. They collect essays, all of his rants, his venomous interviews. They collect those things like sacred texts. If he yells at someone on camera, they put it on a t-shirt. He would sue movie studios for having stories that were vaguely similar to stories he had written. He would threaten colleagues, he berated interviewers, and still they came to him like moths to a flaming chainsaw. They came. Because in the end, Ellison, he didn't hate the attention, he just hated the expectation. He didn't want to be adored. The man wanted to be feared, like he was some kind of truth teller. Not because he was cruel, but because he just thought that the world needed less comfort and more confrontation. Less applause, more interrogation. He didn't believe in giving people what they wanted. He believed in kicking you in the balls and then elbowing you in the teeth and hoping that you learned something from it. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's why the man never softened. Most authors with age, they mellow out. The next author we'll talk about, this happened. They mellow out. They write memoirs, they'll go on book tours. They cry when someone tells them that the book changed their life. But no, not Harlan Ellison. The older he got, the sharper his teeth became. Anyway, he died in 2018. And even in death, you get the sense that he wouldn't have wanted like a big song and dance tribute. Not unless it involved lining up a bunch of publishers and like studio executives and ceremonially backhand bitch slapping all of them in the face, one after the other. Maybe then, yeah, he would have enjoyed that. Yeah, he wasn't just a writer, Harlan Ellison. He was a force, a man who saw kindness as a fault, popularity as an insult, and admiration as a trap. If goths had like an egg-laying queen, it would have been Anne Rice. Black lace, tragic vampires, religious trauma, and an obsession with like morbid beauty and erotic self-harm. Her books were a gateway drug for the disillusioned teenagers who thought that The Cure were too mainstream. Interview with the Vampire didn't just popularise sexy, angsty bloodsuckers. It canonised them. Louis and Lestat were not just characters, they were lifestyles, and their creator became a gothic icon. And then she started suing her fans. Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Anne Rice. Her descent into warfare with her fan base is less a sudden nosedive and more a slow motion ballet of ego, copyright infringement, and the haunting realization that you can't actually control how people love you. That and a truly heroic misuse of the internet. You see, she's not very good at the internet. But anyway, let's rewind to the 1970s. Anne Rice, she burst onto the literary scene with Interview with the Vampire, a moody, romantic, existential, like, poem. Do you know what, like, yeah, anyway, it was narrated by a vampire who was equal parts, like, wine mum and like war criminal, equal parts psycho and, you know, soccer mum. It was stylish, weirdly erotic, and way too introspective for something that featured child murder and devil orgies. Naturally, the public loved it. And over the years, it became a cornerstone of what would eventually be known as the Vampire Chronicles, a sprawling, melodramatic saga that answered questions no one asked, like what if Dracula had a Tumblr account, and what if vampires had seasonal affectiveness disorder, that kind of shit. As Rice's work grew in popularity, so did the fandom, obviously. Fan fiction hit big time. Roleplay, online forums, all of this just exploded. People created alternate endings, they inserted themselves into this world, they invented whole new vampire bloodlines, wrote elaborate love stories between canon characters. Anyone who's even accidentally stumbled upon Harry Potter fanfiction understands that it's chaotic, it's passionate, it's everything that healthy fandom usually becomes. That's what you want your thing to become into. Anne Rice fucking hated it. She hated all of it. Not in just like a, oh, you have to respect my copyright kind of way. No. in a "I will threaten you with litigation if you do not remove your 700-word story about Lestat 69ing Armand," which 5 people read. Do you know what I mean? Like, beginning in the early 2000s, she began to make it clear, brutally clear, that she did not want anyone writing fanfiction based on any of her characters. She famously stated, I will not be doing any kind of Anne Rice voice anyway. She said, "I don't allow fanfiction. The characters are copyrighted. It upsets me terribly to even think about fanfiction with my characters." That is a quote from AnneRice.com. So she was pretty serious. That isn't just a polite ask. That is like a cease and desist in sentence form. She started to go full scorched earth. She started contacting sites like fanfiction.net and demanding that all of the Vampire Chronicles be removed. They were as well. They did. Entire communities were just nuked out of existence overnight. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a literary purge. And to be fair, the copyright law does kind of back her up here. I mean, technically it does, but very few authors will actually enforce it with the same, especially not with the same aggressive glee that Anne Rice did. Most understand that fanfiction isn't stealing, it's just homage, it's love, it's filtered through a chaotic blend of teenage angst and poor grammar. But Anne Rice didn't see it like that. She saw it as a violation, a desecration, a theft of her intellectual property, which, yes, is something she actually said in multiple interviews. What made it worse was her refusal to engage with any of the nuance of the situation. She didn't care if the stories were non-profit. She didn't care if they were respectful, or if they were just tiny wee blurbs on Reddit that only 5 people had liked. If you had used her characters, then you were taking something from her. Full stop. She once told an interview with The Independent, "The characters belong to me. They live in my head. They were created with my blood and bones." Which, yeah, I mean, okay, that is metal as fuck. That is pretty metal thing to say. But it also, it's like, hen, you published them. You put them out there. You made these characters iconic. Did you really think that people were just going to quietly observe from a respectful distance like it was the fucking Mona Lisa? No, that's not how this works. People are going to shove them into fucking Pride fanfiction and draw Lestat and thigh highs, and that's the deal. That is the Faustian bargain that all authors make with publishing houses. You lose control of the thing you made. Right, so by the mid-2000s, Rice took to Amazon, specifically Amazon reviews. She wasn't just reading them, she was responding to them. Personally, like a vengeful vampire herself. She would descend from her castle and publicly rebuke any peasant who dared give her book 3 stars. 3 stars is okay as well. Like, 3 stars isn't even that bad. She famously posted a now deleted comment, reply to a comment saying, "You have used this site as if it were a public urinal to publish falsehoods and lies." A public urinal. She called Amazon a public urinal. She later insisted that she was simply standing up for herself, that readers were bullies, that she had every right to clap back, which, okay, fine, but there's clapping back and then there's full-scale online warfare against your own fanbase because someone said that your latest book wasn't quite as good as the last one, which isn't even an insult. It's important to understand that this wasn't a one-off spiral. This was her operating procedure for years. The message was consistent. You do not own this. You do not get to reinterpret this. You don't get to love this in the wrong way. For a woman who wrote about the passionate, dangerous love of immortal monsters, she sure hated when people got too passionate about her monsters. But then, something changed. In the 2010s, Anne Rice, she started to soften. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was the endless pushback from her fans. Maybe it was the realization that trying to control the internet is like trying to slap fog. But whatever the reason, she began to walk it back. In a 2012 Facebook post, she acknowledged the fanfiction was probably okay, and that it was a mistake to ban it, and that her views had evolved. She never formally reversed her stance, mind you, but she stopped enforcing it. She stopped responding to reviews. She let people love her work however the fuck they wanted, even if it meant Lestat was now occasionally a barista in a gay coffee shop. The lawsuits stopped, the bans stopped, and for the first time in decades, Anne Rice and her fandom seemed to reach a sort of uneasy truce. By the time of her death in 2021, she had mostly rebuilt her public image. She was mourned not just as a gothic icon, but as someone whose work genuinely moved people. And to her eternal credit, she did eventually come round to the idea that fandom was a kind of love, even if it wasn't always the polite, reverent kind that she had wanted. The new Interview with the Vampire show that I've not seen, mind you, I hear that it embraces queerness and fan interpretation in a way that was just unthinkable in the Anne Rice era of fan persecution. But the scars remain. There's an entire generation of writers and readers who remember the era of Anne Rice with a weird blend of admiration and trauma, who grew up knowing that loving something too loudly might get you sued. Anne Rice was the blueprint for literary gatekeeping in the internet age. And while she eventually mellowed, her reign of fan terror left a legacy. One where creativity was met with copyright strikes, and where the line between love and litigation got very, very blurry indeed. And yet, once again, people fucking loved her for it. They still love her. No matter how many forums she scorched, how many fanfic sites she burned, how many reviewers she called illiterate sex gremlins. Alright, I may be paraphrasing, but you get what I mean. Her books meant something to a lot of people. They were romantic, they were powerful, they spoke to misfits and outcasts and anyone who ever felt like the world was too small for their weird, dramatic feelings. And maybe that's the irony. Anne Rice gave a voice to the voiceless, and then tried to silence them. She gave people permission to be dramatic, romantic, and unhinged, and then scolded them for doing it wrong. And still, they forgave her. Maybe because the work is bigger than the woman, or maybe because, deep down, we all love a diva. Right, here we go. Alan Moore. Alan Moore is what happens when a literary genius and an ancient Celtic forest deity merge over a Ouija board and then decide to write comic books. Moore, right? Here we go. Despite Alan Moore having written some of the most important and critically beloved comics in history, he cannot stand the people who love comic books. Not just the studios that adapt them. We spoke about that at length in the previous video. He doesn't just hate them. He doesn't just hate the publishers who meddle with them. No, he resents you. The reader. The fan. The cosplayer. The tattoo haver. The quote poster. The subreddit moderator. Moore looks at you with the weary disgust of a man who built a temple and then watched it turn into a Taco Bell. But let's back up. Alan Moore, of course, is best known for Watchmen, V for Vendetta, From Hell, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Necronomicon. He has a career-long disdain for the superhero genre that somehow made him the most important writer existing within it. Watchmen wasn't just a graphic novel, it was a nuclear bomb that obliterated the comic book status quo. It was grim, it was brutal, it was a postmodern critique of superhero morality that became required reading for anyone who thought Batman didn't kill people because he was better than that. You know what I mean? But here's the problem. Fans didn't treat Watchmen like a deconstruction, they treated it like a manual. Rorschach. Let's talk about Rorschach. He is the unstable, bigoted, racist, emotionally constipated vigilante that Moore intended as a cautionary tale. He was embraced by readers as an icon. The guy, if you've read it, the guy eats beans straight out of the tip. He smells like anger, and he monologues like he's a fucking fascist Batman, but somehow this is the dude that ended up on t-shirts, on tattoos, on Reddit forums dedicated to street justice. You know what I mean? Moore once said, I thought I created a character who was clearly a nutcase. But I have people come up to me in the street and say, I am Rorschach, that is my story. And I think, yeah, great, could you just keep away from me and never come near my family? He told The Guardian that in a much more authentic accent. But that quote pretty much sums up Moore's relationship with fandom in general. Horrified bewilderment that anyone would want to be the monsters that he writes. It's not even a misunderstanding, it's the precise kind of misreading that fuels his ongoing disillusionment with both readers of his work and the culture at large. He once described the superhero genre in an interview with The Guardian as a kind of cultural stunting. It's a sign of emotional arrested development. That is Moore's assessment of anyone over the age of 12 who still is obsessed with capes and vigilante justice. I am emotionally stunted, culturally lost, and probably unfit for meaningful human relationships. Which, to be fair, if you look at X, he's maybe onto something there. But anyway, Moore doesn't just stop there. He has been vocal, endlessly vocal, about the infantilization of modern culture. The way that adults cling to superhero stories, not because they're subversive or powerful, the way that I do, but because they're safe. Because they remind them of a simpler time. Moore doesn't see nostalgia as comfort. He sees it as a slow, corrosive death. And when he sees grown men lined up at Comic-Con dressed as Ozymandias, he doesn't see devotion, he sees decay. And that's assuming that he's even there, which he isn't. He's not. He doesn't do conventions. He doesn't sign merch. Rarely does he do anyway. He very, 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 very rarely does he do meet and greets. He once said to The Telegraph that he avoids fan interactions because I don't want to be the personality cult of Alan Moore. Too late, Alan. What makes it worse, funnier, I suppose, really, is that he tried to lean in to being unknowable. He looks like an Edwardian ghost who took up residence in a fucking meth house. The long hair, giant beard, wild eyes, and more rings than the Mandarin. He calls himself a magician, like an actual ceremonial magician, not like Penn and Teller. He worships a Roman snake god named Glykon. He writes ritualistic poetry, and instead of doing TikTok promos for his latest release, he's probably in a cave somewhere, channeling ancient spirits through a sigil made of goat bones and spite. And yet, once again, people fucking love him for it. Alan Moore fans, of which I am a huge one, are loyal in a fanatical Stockholm Syndrome kind of way. We know he hates us. We've read the interviews, we've seen the quotes, we've heard him compare superhero fans to damaged children, and still, we buy every new edition. We reread Promethea. We quote Watchmen like it's fucking scripture. Show up to forums and discuss Moore's work with reverence like he's a philosopher king who just happens to think that everyone who follows him is a fucking idiot. And maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe we are. Maybe I am. Because someone who repeatedly tells you who they are and what they think of you, and you continue to show up like an enthusiastic golden retriever, that's sort of gone beyond admiration. That is spiritual masochism. That case in point, right? The Killing Joke. Right, this is a tough one for me, right? I fucking love The Killing Joke. It's one of my favourite ever stories. It's one of the most famous Batman stories ever written. It is wildly hailed, rightly, as a dark, mature, groundbreaking take on the Joker's origin and the relationship that he has with Batman. It is rightly revered by fans. It is quoted endlessly. It was adapted into a passable film. It is considered essential reading in the realm of comic books. Alan Moore fucking hates it. He's gone on record multiple times saying that he wished he never wrote it. Honestly, in an interview with Wizard magazine back in the mid-90s, he said that, I think I put far too much melodramatic weight upon a character that was never designed to carry it. And later on in 2003, he would say, yeah, I don't think it's a very good book. It's not anything, I'm throwing myself off with how bad my accent is. He said, I don't think there's anything interesting going on. Imagine writing one of the most influential stories in comic book history and then calling it not very interesting. That's Alan Moore. The man cannot let you enjoy anything. He doesn't want your love. He wants your understanding. And failing that, your quiet contemplation. And what's fascinating is how consistent this all is. The man is not a hypocrite. He's not cashing in on fan culture while secretly hating it. He's walking away every single time. When DC kept adapting his work, he refused royalties. When asked about the Watchmen TV series, the newest one, he said that he spits venom on it. He doesn't want his name on any of these projects. He doesn't want money. He doesn't want the praise. He wants to be left the fuck alone by Hollywood, by fandom, by the entire cult that has formed around his work like moss on an abandoned tomb. And somehow, once again, it makes people love him so much more. It's so ironic. We are perverse creatures, human beings. We love difficult geniuses. We love to be punished by people we admire. We treat Moore's misanthropy as like a personality quirk. We quote his contempt like scripture. We pretend that he's just an eccentric, when really he's telling us very clearly and in no uncertain terms to fuck off. And here's the ultimate irony. Alan Moore spent decades trying to critique fandom, and in doing so became the object of one of the most intense fandoms in modern literature. He wrote Rorschach as a warning, and fans turned him into a role model. He rejected the culture, and the culture embraced him all the more for it. He tried to be unknowable, and now there are people out there who know the exact magical symbolism behind his every ring and robe. He wanted to be a warning. He became a shrine. Maybe it's a little bit of an insight as to why I can be a tad cynical sometimes, I guess you would say. Let me show you one of the walls in my home. Yep, there it is. I am part of the problem. I stare at my hardcover copy of Killing Joke and my limited edition Watchmen cover, and I know, somehow, somewhere, Alan Moore sees me, and he is absolutely 100% deeply, cosmically disappointed in me. Most authors who hate their fans make sure that you know it. They show up in interviews, type unhinged Facebook rants, respond to Amazon reviews like they're defending themselves in court. Not Thomas Pynchon. No. Thomas Pynchon doesn't shout. He disappeared. He almost doesn't exist at all, and that's worse. That is so much worse. Because if the rest of the authors in this video are throwing rocks at their own fan base, Pynchon is standing across the street with binoculars, silently judging you while wearing one of those Groucho glasses and fake mustache combos. He's the literary equivalent of Bigfoot, if Bigfoot wrote postmodernist novels full of mathematical riddles, nuclear paranoia, dick jokes, and crying babies and rocket ships. Anyway, that's a tortured metaphor. Anyway, the man is not just elusive, he's like a mythological figure, Thomas Pynchon. The fact people still love him desperately, obsessively, irrationally, feels like the ultimate joke. Let's form a baseline here. Thomas Pynchon is one of the most important writers of the 20th century. His magnum opus, Gravity's Rainbow, which was in the mid-70s, it's a 760-page fever dream about World War II. It's got rockets, sex, entropy, and possibly the end of the world. Many have called the book unreadable. Many have called the book a masterpiece, and some have said it's like trying to decipher an acid trip that's been translated from Morse code into Welsh. It's brilliant, it's brutal, it's baffling. It made him a legend. And then he just wasn't there anymore. Not in like a dead sense. I mean, he's still alive, he's still writing, he's still publishing books every so often that make people question the validity of the English language, but publicly, Pynchon he has ceased to exist sometime around 1963. He doesn't do book tours, he doesn't do readings, he doesn't give interviews. There's only like a few confirmed photographs of him. Most of them were from college. He is about as fond of media attention as Jared Leto is to authenticity. And there's a reason for that. According to his own rare and often second-hand statements, Pynchon believes that the cult of the author, something Alan Moore was touching on, the fetishization of the creator of the art is inherently damaging to the art. In a 1963 letter to his publisher, because that's how you communicated back then. You had to write each other letters. He said, "My belief is that writers should be read and not heard, seen or even known, like Amy Schumer." I added the last bit in. The man is cool, right? That's cool. It's mysterious. It's admirable. Admirable, even. Except, right, the longer it goes on, the more it starts to feel like disdain. Not just disdain for the media, but for you, specifically, the reader. For people who just want to ask questions. But he doesn't want to answer your questions. He doesn't want to explain himself to you or to anyone else. He just wants to drop a 900-page literary labyrinth on your lap and then watch you drown in it from the shadows whilst like twiddling his fingers like Mr. Burns. And yet the fans came. Oh boy, howdy. Pynchon fans are fucking intense, by the way. When I was looking into that, like, I read Gravity's Rainbow. I did not, and I knew about Thomas Pynchon, that he was this sort of mysterious, unknown figure. I didn't understand how intense all of this was. We are talking deep fucking Reddit threads, endless annotation projects, conspiracy theories about his identity, like dissertations that could double as like brain surgery fucking manuals. People devote their entire lives to decoding Gravity's Rainbow, Inherent Vice, Against the Day. They write scholarly essays about every single sentence that this man wrote. They hold academic conferences where entire panels are devoted to like Pynchon's use of parabolas as a metaphor for moral decay. And how does the man respond to all of this? He doesn't. That is exactly the point. In fact, he avoids it. It's like he doesn't exist. In the 1970s, when he was awarded the National Book Award for Gravity's Rainbow, he didn't attend the event. Instead, he sent his friend Irwin Corey, who was a professional comedian. He accepted the award on his behalf, and he delivered this fake, rambling, satirical speech. No one knew what the fuck was going on. It was like a piece of performance art. It was trolling in the 1970s. Pynchon was flipping off every literary critic with both hands and a wink. Right, The Simpsons. The man appeared on The Simpsons. The Simpsons contacted him. They wanted him to cameo on the show in 2004, and he agreed. The man agreed, but he had conditions. He said he would appear on The Simpsons only if they put a paper bag over his animated face. and then he insisted on self-deprecating. He insisted that they make fun of him specifically. He wanted the subject of the humour to be himself. He wanted them to make fun of him.
What do you think, Thomas Pynchon?
These wings are delicious. I'll put this recipe in the Gravity's Rainbow cookbook, right next to the frying of Latka 49.
And so yes, this was Pynchon's actual voice. He actually appeared on The Simpsons. He actually asked for his cartoon character to wear a bag over his head. Because heaven fucking forbid someone even get even a slight inclination as to what the dude looks like, even as a Simpsons character. And look, this is more than just eccentricity. Pynchon's refusal to be seen is a full-blown artistic stance. It's him saying, the work should speak for itself. You don't need me, and frankly, I don't need you. It's the purest form of authorial detachment. It's not aloof, it's not hostile, it's just cold. And in a way, that hurts even more. Because at least when Harlan Ellison screams at you, it's engagement. It's a form of twisted intimacy. Anne Rice yelling at your fanfiction means that Anne Rice read your fanfiction. But Pynchon doesn't even acknowledge that you exist, or his work exists, or he exists. He's the dad who left for cigarettes. Do you know what I mean? And never came back, and now you have found his diary and you're trying to impress him with essays about it. And Pynchon fans, I mean, God fucking bless them, they are a special breed. They are worshipping a ghost. They treat literary analysis like it's religious devotion. They build entire websites like Pynchon Wiki or thomaspynchon.com, and timelines, speculative essays about his life are meticulously documented, cross-referenced, and, let's be honest, probably pinned to the wall with string like they're on the hunt for Pepe Sylvia. And what's Pynchon's response to all of this obsessive love? Yes, again, fuck all. Nothing. A paper bag on his head. There's something almost villainous about it. Like, yes, I get it. Celebrity worship is toxic. But also, could you not maybe, like, even just once pop your head in and say, hey guys, thanks for devoting the better part of your lives to analysing my rocket symbolism. I hope you're all eating well. Do you know what I mean? But no, you get fuck all. You don't get nothing. You get not a tweet, not a TikTok, not a grainy webcam appearance from a cave. Just silence. Dense, unbroken, judgmental silence. And yet, here we go again. People love him for it. People keep reading him. Because, like, the books are good. They're brilliant, even. Pynchon has a way of talking. He takes the absurd and makes it, like, apocalyptically huge. His characters are just confused, horny little paranoid ants, trying to make sense of giant invisible machinations that are beyond their contemplation. Somehow, yeah, that feels relatable. Gravity's Rainbow is the great American novel as a nervous breakdown. It's punishing. It's relentless. It's full of, like, musical numbers and psychosexual rocket fetish. If you make it to the end of Gravity's Rainbow, you feel less like a reader and more like a survivor. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to meet you. Because the kind of person that survives Gravity's Rainbow and then asks questions about it is maybe not the person he was. Maybe he knows his fans too well. Maybe he knows that you're trying to get answers that he never fucking had. Maybe he understands that the second he opens his mouth, the second that he gives any kind of affirmation or fucking decline, the illusion breaks. The mystery shatters. The worship dies. Because the second that you humanize the ghost, it stops becoming supernatural. So Thomas Pynchon remains where he's always been. Nowhere. Everywhere. In the ether. Hiding in plain sight. Maybe he's the guy that was standing behind you at the grocery store when you were buying the condoms. Maybe he's watching Reddit threads from a burner account. Maybe he's just a projection. Maybe the real writer died in the 1970s and was replaced by a group, a conglomerate of writers. Maybe. Who knows? We'll never know. That's the point. Because for Thomas Pynchon, the greatest insult you could give a reader is the illusion of closeness. The greatest sin is accessibility. And his final, devastating gift to his fans is this. No matter how much you love him, you will never truly know if he loves you back. Some authors scream at their fans. Some sue their fans. Some just disappear into the mist, like a cryptid who dropped a classic novel and then fled into the woods. Much like Thomas Pynchon, J.D. Salinger did not hate you loudly. He hated you quietly, the way a house cat hates you, the way a recluse hates you. He was the embodiment of do not disturb. Now, let's set the scene. It's 1951. Salinger has released Catcher in the Rye, a coming-of-age novel that became the defining book for alienated teens with a self-diagnosed superiority complex. And assassins, by the way. Assassins love this book. Holden Caulfield wasn't just a protagonist. He was a lifestyle. The hat, the disaffection, the internal screaming about phonies. Phony. It was like someone taught him teen angst. You know what I mean? The world ate it up. The book sold millions. It became a symbol of rebellion, isolation, and every post-war kid's vague desire to, punch a stranger in the throat for existing too confidently. Salinger, who had been moderately successful as a short story writer, he was now a full-blown literary rock star. And of course, he fucking hated it. He wasn't just uncomfortable with it. He wasn't humble. It was open, visceral loathing. As soon as the book took off, Salinger began the slow, dramatic vanishing act into publication history. He published a few more stories, mind you. He gave a couple of interviews he probably regretted the second the ink dried, and then he slowly, meticulously withdrew from public life. Like Henry Hill entering the witness protection program, he vanished. By the 1960s, Salinger, the man had basically disappeared. No readings, no book tours, no interviews, no new books. Unlike Pynchon, he continues to write, but Salinger was just gone. He retreated to a modest home in Cornish, New Hampshire. He built a 6-foot fence around his property and refused to speak to anyone who wasn't directly related to him or bringing him food. This wasn't just your garden variety shyness. Salinger's retreat was pathological. The man installed a buzzer system at his gate and then refused all requests for appearances, no matter how lucrative or flattering they would be. He turned down biographers, journalists, publishers, anyone who wanted to ask, "So what's holding up to these days?" The answer was always the same: "None of your fucking business, get off my lawn." And the fans, right, they did not help. They came and drove. The fucking book is like read in school, American schools. So the fans obviously came in their droves. They mailed letters, they knocked on the gate, they wrote poems, they drew pictures, they made pilgrimages to Cornish like it was fucking Mecca for high school dropouts. There's even a verified story, right, of a teenager showed up at Salinger's door one time and was invited in. He couldn't fucking believe how lucky he was. He was invited in purely to be scolded by Salinger for the intrusion and then sent home like a fucking misbehaving Labrador. Do you know what I mean? Like, fuck off. Anyway, to be fair, Salinger did respond to some letters sometime, usually politely, to be fair, yeah, sometimes warmly, but always with a sense of obligation, like a man trying to hold back a tidal wave with a mop and bucket. You know what I mean? He didn't want to be the voice of a generation. He wanted to be left alone in his cabin to write stories that no one would read. Which he did. For decades, that he kept writing, mind you, every day. He filled, his drawers were filled. He had loads of manuscripts, is what I'm getting at. He refused to publish these manuscripts. Filling his drawers just made me chuckle. The most fascinating part of all of this was that he basically told us that this is what he was going to do. The Catcher in the Rye, right? is basically a 200-page warning about how much he despised fakeness, phoniness as he called it, fame, just human interaction in general. Holden Caulfield spends the entire book telling us how much he fucking hates people, how much he hates crowds, attention, anything even remotely resembling praise. And we, as a culture, of course we did. We read that and went, I bet this guy would love to do a fucking panel at Comic-Con. Do you know what I mean? I bet this guy would love me to go up and talk to him. Anyway, it's like walking into a room full of do not enter signs and then setting up a table and chairs like you're the rate my takeaway guy. Anyway, and then there's the obsession. The assassins. Do you know what I mean? People became fans of Salinger, didn't just love The Catcher in the Rye. They projected onto it. They made it their entire personality. Several assassins have been found with a copy of the book on them, although that might just be drummed up. But you know what I mean? People saw Holden Caulfield not as a critique of self-centered adolescence, but as a role model, a truth teller, a soothsayer, a misunderstood genius who saw through the bullshit, which, to be perfectly clear, is not the point of Catcher in the Rye. Holden is not okay. The entire novel is a slow-motion mental spiral, told through the lens of someone who thinks that everyone else is the problem. Right? You understand? He's not aspirational. He's a cautionary tale. Try telling that to a fucking sophomore who's just read it for the umpteenth time and wants to try and explain alienation to you like he's discovered it. Do you know what I mean? The real tragedy is that Salinger, he could have capitalised on all of this shit. He could have been a brand, an icon. He could have licensed Holden for merch. He could have done movie deals, launched a franchise. But he didn't. He refused. He kept his work sacred, untouched. Even when Hollywood came knocking, and yeah, they knocked. He slammed the door in their face so hard that it left a fucking crater. In fact, he was so against adaptation that he famously included a clause in his will forbidding any film versions of his work. Ever. So, naturally, people are still trying to fucking make films of his work. It's like the life goal of certain people. But anyway, because when you hate your fans, they take it personally. Right? I mean, they become obsessed with winning you over. They treat your contempt like it's a riddle to be solved. Like, if I can understand him well enough, maybe he'll change his mind and publish that secret novel about Holden as an adult. No, he fucking won't. No, he won't. He died in 2010, but mostly because he died in 2010, but even back then, he fucking wouldn't have. He hadn't published a single new piece of work in nearly half. People still won't let it go. The mythology just gets worse. There are rumours. Persistent, admittedly tantalising rumours that his unpublished manuscripts are just sitting there, ready to be released someday, that his estate is just sat on a treasure trove of stories that J.D. Salinger wrote in solitude. The great recluse was secretly working this whole time and has left behind a final message. Maybe not. Because what Salinger teaches us, more than Ellison's rage, more than Rice's lawsuits or Moore's misanthropy, is that sometimes the most aggressive form of hate is silence, absence, disconnection, the deliberate, persistent refusal to be a part of the conversation. He didn't hate fans because they were annoying. He hated fandom as a concept, much like Pynchon before him. He saw love as an intrusion. He saw praise as noise, attention as a trap. And guess what? We fucking love him for it. We are broken like that. We admire the artist who vanishes. We chase the ones who tell us not to follow. We turn "Don't Look at Me" into, like, legendary status. We want to look at the don't think of the colour blue. That is what we are. Salinger wasn't just a writer, he was a myth. A symbol of what happens when a man who wanted to write for himself is forced to do it for everyone else. And instead of performing, he just closed the curtains. Maybe that's why he's still relevant. Because in a world where every author is expected to be a brand, a content creator, a podcast host, a personality, Salinger reminds us what it looks like to reject all of it. He and Pynchon both. They don't want your admiration. They don't want your following. They want to write. They want to tell stories. And then they want you to leave them alone. But we can't. We just can't. Maybe that's what love looks like sometimes. It's messy, one-sided, uninvited. Sunshine, lollipops, and anyway, I'm done. Bye.
Oh, yes. I see that you know your judo well. Good one. And you, sir, are you waiting to receive my limp penis? How dare get your hands off there.
No, we've only got one.
Ta-ta and farewell.
So I guess getting in the